All right, we are live. Welcome to 6G Agenda. I'm here. I'm Andrew, here to talk about what they won't, like always. And today I'm joined with Alex from Nuggets News. And yeah, it's special guest. We're going to talk about some little known facts. At least I didn't know anything about it. The Port Arthur Massacre. This is kind of the catalyst event to how the gun situation ended up where it is right now in Australia. And yeah, Alex, he's from, I believe you're from, or at least live in the area where this happened. So welcome on, Alex. Tell everybody where they can find you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, mate. And yeah, thanks for coming on my show last week. But yeah, so I've been a conspiracy theorist and dot connector for 25 years now. Had a pretty crazy life. I used to be a pharmacist and I quit that in 2017. A psychonaut. I'm just always been obsessed with how the body, the mind, and how the world works. So yeah, Australia's a very interesting place with some stuff we're going to get into today in terms of psyops over the years, and I feel like we're a bit of a test bed for the new world order. There's some ancient stuff here if you're into like your resets and covered up history, and yeah, we'll get into all that.
Super excited. Yes, thank you for having me on last week. Yeah, we had a good time. We got into the just kind of the I guess what you would call the zenith that is 6G Agenda over here. Yeah, it was a great time. I had a good time. Hopefully your audience liked it. And yeah, I'm sure everybody's going to enjoy this on my side because we love to get into this kind of shit all the time. And yeah, maybe we'll have time for some cryptid talks, a little bit of the Australia mysteries. We were kind of talking about this in the pre-show, a little bit of the alien ancient stuff like that. So that'll be fun. Yeah, so we'll see how far we get on that. Yeah, so I'm super excited. So tell us a little bit about, I guess, yourself, Tasmania, like, where you're from, stuff like that. And then kind of, we could give a little background on like, cause I'm 96. I mean, how old were you then whenever that happened, et cetera. So we'll get into
Oh,
kind
I
of.
think I was grade 3, so I would have been like 8 or 9 when this massacre happened. And yeah, it happened down in Tasmania. For people that know, that's the little island down the very bottom of Australia. And yeah, I've done detailed episodes on a lot of stuff we're going to talk about today. On Nuggets News is our biggest channel on YouTube, and I'm pretty big on X, and obviously post to all the socials as well if people want to check out anything we discuss in any more detail. But yeah, so I grew up here, traveled the world for a year. I've traveled Australia, and then been doing YouTube full time for 9 years now. But yeah, if you want to get into all the juicy cover up that was this massacre that de-armed Australia, then yeah, let's do it.
Hell yeah. I'll even pull up a little bit about it, you know what I mean? Just a little,
Yeah, perfect. And
overview
if
from
there's
Wikipedia.
if there's a couple of things I mention and you want to Google search them and bring them up for people at home to show the images what I'm
Definitely.
talking about, I'll help you do that as well. But basically, like I said, Australia's a bit of a test bed for the New World Order and rolling out these UN and all the globalist agendas. So back in the mid 90s, there was a big push from our government to ban guns, right? And there were actually footage of senators getting up in Parliament and saying it's going to take a massacre on Tasmanian soil to get this legislation through, because Tasmania and South Australia were the two states that were really pushing back against this, because we didn't really have a lot of gun violence or anything like that going on. And so there was two people that got up on Parliament on record and said that before this massacre took place. There's also documents from the UN saying that they wanted this gun control in rolled out by 1996, and this is when it all happened. So the official story is that a young guy who was on the spectrum, so he had the IQ of a 13-year-old, and he supposedly walked into this Port Arthur historic site, which is a tourist site. And this has got a dark history. So this is one of the oldest towns in Australia where they brought all the convicts to settle. And that tourist attraction, because it's an old rundown prison. There's ghost tours. They say it's haunted, real dark energy there. All this type of thing. There's a little island called Dead Man's Island where you can take a ferry to and see all these graves of the worst convicts. And this ties into part of the story as well. So basically, the story is that this guy walked into this cafe that day and just started headshotting all these people. I think it was 19 people in the first minute or two is the official story. But we've got testimony from survivors that worked at the Port Arthur site, that lived there, and they knew Martin Bryant because he was from the area. And they survived, and they spent years going around doing talks saying it wasn't him that did the shooting. And that matched all the other survivor testimony, because There's a few hundred people there that day at the tourist site. It was a busy Sunday in tourist season, but this is a tiny little town with like a few hundred people, right, in a Tasmania, which is like the kind of smallest, lowest population state. So all these other anomalies start unfolding once you look into the official story. So this is only like an hour and a half away from the capital city of Hobart. There should be police and all that on the scene. The local police, there's only 2 in that local area. They got diverted away from a fake we've found drugs kind of call that came in. So they got sent as far away as they could to the other side of the peninsula when all this happened. Again, this is a just planned distraction.
Wow.
When the
Oh yeah,
first shot,
absolutely. It sounds like October 7th in Israel. You know, all of a sudden the most secure borders in the world, one could argue, all of a sudden the IDF's gone. You know, that day, and then everybody gets hit at that concert. So very, very, it rhymes with that.
yeah, and the police taking 4 hours, I think, to get there, maybe 6, in a place that should have taken an hour to get there. There's all the same sort of anomalies, right? Like they're
Yeah.
letting this operation unfold. There's WikiLeaks did a great breakdown of all this, talking about how there's multiple people connected to intelligence agencies in the cafe. And one of them even got up and said, no, not here, when he started shooting, because they believe that it might have meant to have taken place on the ferry that I just spoke about, where would have been nowhere to go full of passengers. But the ferry had just changed its timetable to half an hour earlier because of daylight savings. And there was talk that this guy was like around the car park wanting to get on the ferry and got told it already left, and then kind of change of plans. Or maybe it was meant to happen in the cafe and all the people in intelligence that were involved were meant to get taken out.
Yeah.
Because, oh, sorry, you go. Yeah. Any questions, jump in anytime.
No, I was gonna say let's get a visual a little bit of like this place, what we're talking about a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I'm curious. Like I want to, you kind of know the area, at least like what we're talking about here. So 1 second, I'll get this ready. Because yeah,
Just
I'm
want to
curious to
search for
see.
like Port Arthur Historic Site. Yeah, there it is. And the Broad Arrow Cafe is the actual place where the shooting took place. So it's right next to all these old rundown kind of
I wonder if it'll
like
show the
prison and
cafe
that
there.
type of thing. Now, the Broad Arrow Cafe, interestingly, got bought by the Tasmanian government the year before all this happened as well. So it changed into
Really?
government hands. All
Holy
the
shit!
owners were on a retreat that Sunday, which was, very rare for them. So all the sort of senior staff weren't there either, which is another anomaly.
Is this it right here? This
Oh, I've
place?
only still got your Google search on the screen, unless that's
Oh, really?
frozen on my end. But that's
Oh,
what
I
I'm looking.
see.
Yeah.
Here, hold on. Is this here? Is it showing me moving now? Oh wait, why is it? Yeah, you're right. It is just it just stopped on the actual. I'll just go ahead and share my entire screen. But yeah, that's wild, dude. So here, hold on, let me see.
So I'll keep going through some of the other anomalies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that is the cafe that was ordered to be destroyed and burnt down. No investigation to take place, which is against Australian law. When all these international people die on Australian soil, you have to have an inquest, right? And tell the families what happened and stuff.
Yeah. Wait, so okay, so instant demolition right
Burn
away.
it down.
So when we have assassinations in America, a lot of times you'll see the same thing. Like Charlie Kirk, I don't know if you saw, but they redid the concrete like the same week that he got killed.
Yes.
Like they redid it all.
Mhm.
I believe that there was even a hatch door that they concreted over. And then
Same
also
with
you had
9/11, right? Yeah.
yes, yeah, JFK. I mean, the first Masonic temple that was ever built in Dallas. He was shot
Yeah.
right in front of it. They raised it as soon as it was done.
Yeah.
So very crazy, almost like a completion. Like it was very crazy. Sorry,
So
but yeah, go ahead.
if you want to search for Port Arthur truck or Port Arthur morgue truck, the Tasmanian government ordered a custom-made Chevy, which we don't have in Australia, to hold 20 bodies. And again, there was none of these trucks in the whole of Australia. Why would you send it to like little old sleepy Tasmania beforehand? And then they sold it afterwards. And you can still find the photo of when they sold it, like in the local classifieds in the newspaper afterwards. So it's this bright orange Chevy truck with this custom metal to carry all these bodies. So that would just happen to be in Tasmania before all this took place as well, which is another huge red flag.
Really?
So you've also got on the day that this happened, 33 dead. There's your
Look at
33.
that.
I'll get
It
into the
says,
numerology of all this soon as well.
of course, yeah. I love that you're hip on that because that's what we love to do on this show. All about the mystery Babylon, all about the Freemasonry symbolism. And it's funny because 35 ended up dead, but of course they report 33. He holds 3 hostage, and of course, the toll will rise. But we're gonna report it now while we have the symbolism, right?
Yeah. So, well, let's get into some 33s while you've got this on the screen. So this happened on the 28th and 29th of April. And as you know, I just did a video yesterday on how we're heading into the sacrifice season in the satanic calendar. And that week leading up to April 30 is the main sort of date in that satanic calendar. So 29th of the 4th, 33, 33 dead. And they kept this guy in solitary confinement and tortured him because he kept pleading not guilty, right? And then they finally prosecuted him on the 22nd of the 11th, 33.
That's insane. I was gonna see if I could find that post was on Instagram that you made that. It was where you had all the dates of all the different events that have happened on like around that time.
That
I
was
believe
just on
that's
my
symbolism.
Nuggets News Instagram yesterday. You can find that. So let's get into some more juicy stuff. So on that day, there just happened to be an international trauma surgeons convention in sleepy little old Hobart Hospital. So all the world's best trauma surgeons happened to be there that day. There was an
Wow.
international media conference in sleepy old Hobart. So all the world's media happened to be there that day.
That's just like 9/11 too. 9/11,
Yeah.
they had medical standby because they were running a drill. And so, of course, to mitigate how many people were killed, because you have a massive, 2 buildings coming down. I mean, you're talking mass casualty. So they do this where they will have a mitigation, situation almost.
Yeah. Now, the top Tasmanian police officer who was first on the scene and the media respondent came out a few years ago that he was a pedophile and he took his own life when all this started to surface. And there's a big police investigation now because the police covered it up for years, right? With everything we know now about putting compromised people and pedophiles in positions of power, right? This ties very much into this story too. Now, you've also got all the special, there was a, how they do these like pre-planned events. There was an operation with all the special service, kind of like Australia's Army special servicemen, in the months beforehand that they did in Tasmania. And they were there that day as well, got flown in, right? And there's a footage that you can see of this special service agent leaving in the front seat of the ambulance going. And now all these SAS guys that were involved died in a mysterious Tomahawk helicopter crash in Queensland 2 months later as well. They covering up their tracks of like who was involved, right? So yeah, I could go on with hundreds of these instances and things that came up that were just the biggest red flags, like almost more obvious than 9/11. But this is just not known because 96 was kind of early pre-internet in Australia. The survivors were never allowed to talk. There's been an Aussie YouTuber with a channel called The Wasp Files who's done like dozens and dozens of episodes on this year. And so this is kind of like the first time where he's interviewed people that survived and really covered this in that modern era of alternate media. Which has been great, right? Because this is one of these things that's just so horrific to talk about. The fact that people got massacred and, normies just don't want to believe that there's no way the government could do that. The same with all conspiracies, right? But when you start to look into it, there's just that many red flags that this was an inside job to de-arm Australia, and they passed those gun laws, ordered the cafe to get burnt down. This guy is still in prison. No one's allowed to talk to him or anything. This is coming up to the 30-year reunion this year in April.
30 years. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So it just rhymes with every other cover up that you see, like Charlie Kirk, for instance, with the way that they're shutting down and gag order on everybody when it comes to any information regarding that day. So it's insane. Has anyone ever had to sit down with Martin B, Cake in a Cup asked? She's a fellow, I believe, Australian.
Yeah. Journalists have tried and whatnot, but it's just good luck because it's so corrupt down here with like the cops and the prison system, and
He's the man in prison. Sorry, I didn't catch that. That was his name, Martin B. Yeah, I think you did say
Yeah.
that. So yeah, okay.
So
So
the other thing
yeah.
with Martin is that he was the heir to a huge inheritance. So his mother and his father both died in suspicious circumstances in the months and years before this happened. He flew to the Tavistock Institute, and there's deep connections
Mm.
with MK Ultra in Australia, and there's some of the Sykes involved moved down from Sydney to Hobart in the years beforehand as well. And yeah, Tattersalls was like the big lotto. I don't know if it's called lotto or Tats lotto or whatever in America too, but yeah, he was heir to this huge fortune, and then all this happens as well, which is very suspicious.
Wow. Okay, so yeah, so I mean, yeah, you have the government buying the property, shutting everything down, instant burning, gag order pretty much on everybody, can't talk about it, and just take the guns. I mean, just instantly take the gun. So, is there a possible foreign intelligence involvement with this? Do you think maybe like British or Mossad or CIA? Do you think there's any? Is there anybody who alleges that there was something involvement, some kind of involvement regarding that?
Yeah, one of my other friends who's been deep into this, who's older than me, he did some research finding connections to Mossad, and I forget the name of the guy that was specifically involved. Was it Joe Engels or something? Yeah, Joe Villas. Joe
Mm.
Villas, if you want to look that up.
Yeah,
And there
let's
was a
go ahead.
suspicious black truck seen there that day with blacked out windows in one photo from when the helicopters and the media were circling the cafe. Yeah, Joe
Is it
Viles.
Villis?
I believe so, or close to that. Yeah.
Joe
And he's
Villas,
been connected
Australia.
to Mossad and intelligence agencies. And yeah, obviously, I think they're all connected at the highest levels, right? Like ASIO is the name of our intelligence agency. Yeah.
Australian conspiracy theorist and internet journalist based in Joe Villis.
So
Wait,
he actually wrote a book about the Port Arthur massacre with kind of like the
yeah,
alternate version. You know how they like to control both sides. So he
yes.
actually wrote a book, kind of like giving his spin again to distract people away from probably what actually happened.
Okay, so this guy, they call him an Australian conspiracy theorist on here as well, so they discredit any truth that he did give if he did, right? They
Yeah.
tend to put a
Yeah.
little truth in there. So here it talks about Villis investigations blame significant world events. Joint CIA Mossad operations, and he maintained in disclaimers on his site that his reports were written in the interest of public safety. Wow. He supposedly proved that such happenings as the death of Diana. So in other words, that he's saying that he's decoding her death as well as some CIA Mossad scandal.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if it was him or it was another guy that might have been the Mossad then, if he is exposing some of that Zionist stuff. But yeah, a lot of people say that that book he wrote was kind of like the distraction rather than really getting to what actually happened.
Oh, here we go. Israeli operation carried out by Mr. Arvam. Let's see if this is it. This is the IDF Defense Forces. So he's saying that it's this section of the IDF is Mr. Arvam.
Okay. I haven't even heard of that Mr.
It's
Arvin
a
before. Have
certain
you?
unit, and it's a certain unit in the IDS. He's saying that he's blaming them for being involved, which I believe it. It's so funny, I just kind of guessed with the recent events with the Mossad and everything. It's hard to not
Yeah.
ask, oh, did they happen to be involved? And sure enough, there's somebody at least alleging and probably has some proof in his book to back it up. I'd love to read it.
And now you've got the lady that was head of like the anti-gun commission and all that stuff here in Australia when this all happened. As soon as it happened and they got the gun laws through, she moved to the US and became head of one of your, lobby groups to de-arm America. And then, as we know, a lot of the school shootings kicked off. I think Columbine school shooting was in April, wasn't it? In this season of Sacrifice, I'm pretty sure it
Holy
was.
shit. Was that the same year? 90. I know it was in the 90s.
I think Columbine was like a year or two after from memory, but same
19.
time frame.
No, go ahead. Actually, I was just looking at his birth dates. So go ahead because I didn't find the date yet.
Yeah, that's if you find that image yesterday from the Sacrifice season, it's wild. Like the Titanic.
No, you're right. April
bombings.
20th. Well, April 20th, it's funny because that's Hitler's birthday.
There you go.
So, it's like, we all celebrate 420. The day that Elon Musk launched his first space rocket was on 420.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a coincidence that they're giving these Nazi salutes and they're messing with people that have Skull and Bones ties, and the Skull and Bones has ties to the Thule Society, and they funded the Nazis and Bolsheviks. There's a lot of communist ties. And then you have JD Vance and Peter Thiel and all these people who have skull and bones and Nazi ties that are like the next generation of this. And they're rubbing shoulders with Elon. So it's very obvious what's kind of occurring regarding this. And I think that, this is what we're talking about. It's kind of a build up to that.
Yeah, kind of like the parallel space program, right? To NASA, just like the Nazis kind of had their parallel breakaway, UFO program and all that stuff. And
yeah, it's kind of genius. Like imagine that they built up conspiracy theories about NASA, and NASA probably might be maybe the least nefarious, and then they now have private companies doing things, and these private companies are the more nefarious ones, and they're supposed to be the decentralized. We have your interest at heart, but in reality, they're the ones bringing in what we worried about coming from these government entities like NASA, it's the Pentagon, etc. Right? Very funny how that works.
yeah, and this ties into like these record freedom of information requests. If they're privatizing all these military contracts and all this secret stuff that's really going on, then you can't get those same documents, right, from all the public coffers through Freedom of Information Acts. And there's been a record number of Freedom of Information Acts in Australia, and they're just like denying them. And the backlog is so long now of all the stuff that's been going on here for so long now. Yeah.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. So they, legally have to respond to you, but they're notorious here as well for just not doing it. Or if they do respond to you, they'll send you a full redacted fucking, page where it's just you don't get anything out of it.
So all the documents related to Port Arthur got a 99 or 75-year suppression order put on them as well. Yeah.
Really? Holy shit. So yeah, we're not going to find out till we're dead. I mean,
yeah,
99
and everyone
years.
involved is long gone.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. So, okay. So I found this article here. I don't know, I'm sure you covered a bunch of it. So this was kind of what we started to look at. It's this 13 questions about the day that happened. It's funny because I mean, it was kind of, you have to really specifically type in stuff to get this. Like if I type COL, Columbine shooting comes up right away. But I had to really like search for this because there's a Port Arthur in Texas. And so it just kept bringing that up. And I'm like, damn,
So a couple more things related to the guns. So one of the guns that was found to be used was meant to be handed in Melbourne. And so how did that gun with that serial number that was handed in to police and the government in Melbourne end up down in Tasmania involved in this massacre? Also, a lot of the forensics and like bullets experts and stuff, they kind of got a lot of that covered up as well from some of their official statements to what the final story was, because some of the survivors had shotgun pellets in them. So it was like there was shotguns used because the guy carried in a sports bag full of multiple weapons, they say, but then the official story was different with what guns are used and that type of thing. So yeah.
It says right here, the semi-automatic weapon, a Belgian-made AR-13 or 15. Yeah, 15. It was handed in at the, like you just said, at the Melbourne Baywater police station. And so they're saying that they, vow that they're going to investigate these claims, et cetera, and then go on to give a whole fluff article about whatever.
Yeah. So then after this all takes place at the cafe, there's a final siege where he drives to a different location and he's seen talking to other people on the way out and then actually kills a couple more people. Again, were they kind of involved? And it's actually like the opening scene of Batman where he takes out everyone involved in, robbing the bank and then gets away on the bus himself.
Yeah.
It's got that feel to it, this story. So
yeah,
then
the
he
Joker,
goes, there's the morgue truck there. But then he goes to this other seascape cottage where there's the final siege and he supposedly has 2 hostages. You can still listen to the negotiations on the phone and you can hear other people and gunshots in the background when this guy, this simpleton guy, is talking on the phone to the negotiator. And then you've got instances of these local police snipers that were involved saying, I've got him in my sights, like take the shot and stuff. And they get told to stand down as if like they've got a guy on the inside as well in that final siege. So
really, I wonder if we can find that, please, because that would be intriguing to listen to the audio if we could, because how is he talking and there's gunshots in the background, and it sounds like a pretty smart operation. This whole thing's pretty, somebody with the mind of a 13-year-old's carrying out an operation, it sounds like.
Yeah. And so when the first shots are fired, that morning. I think it was at 10:30 because this actual at the cafe, the massacre takes place at about 12:30 lunchtime. But they say there was gunshots heard at 10:30 at this place where the siege was later on in the final stand down. So at that time, this guy Martin Bryant is actually seen at a petrol station having a coffee by multiple people an hour away. So when the first gunshots start ringing out in this whole story, so yeah, again, witnesses have
Wow.
identified that he wasn't even there, nowhere near it.
Okay, so yeah, clearly there's a lot of fuckery afoot. Man, that's crazy. So yeah, so with the morgue truck, it was a pre-bought, pre-purchased morgue truck. You said that they used custom designed
Custom made to
refrigerated
hold
morgue
20
truck. Yeah.
bodies. Yeah, we don't have
Holy
Chevys in
shit.
Australia.
Really?
Or rarely, if they
Yeah.
are, it's like these. They're like custom ones or ones imported from the US, but extremely rare. Yeah.
Really? This vehicle was primarily used as a disaster vehicle in the Port Arthur massacre. Currently for sale, and all reasonable offers will be considered. Oh, so this is a sale thing for it.
That is the ad that was in the paper to sell it after it happened. So why was it there before
Yeah.
in Sleepy Old Tasmania, and why are they selling it straight after?
Holy shit, dude. The memorabilia value of it for anyone making a movie series or writing a book. That is fucked up, dude. Why would you? Yeah. I mean, didn't they use it? Did they put real bodies in here?
Have a look at the email. cwright@trump.net.au.
Oh, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, 96. I wonder what he was doing. I mean, he was
Yeah,
doing
I don't
this.
think anyone's been able to track down that email address or a website it links to or anything. Again, even on way back machine and stuff. But yeah,
Wow. Yeah. It's almost like a subsidiary because at Trump would be like a subsidiary. You know what I mean? Where like this person may not, obviously it's not Trump, but somebody who works maybe at a subsidiary company of Trump, you know? That's
yeah,
crazy. Holy shit. Uh yeah, you mentioned this too. The authorities being diverted away.
yeah.
That's
Trauma
crazy.
seminar. Yeah,
It talks about a 2018 annual meeting, 1996 meeting held on the very day the massacre occurred on April 28th. Just before lunch on the massacre, police received a phone call claiming there's a stash of heroin, 20 to 30-minute drive opposite. That's what you were saying, dude. That's crazy. So they had to go all the way over here just to give a
yeah,
visual of what you were saying. Holy
yes.
shit. So this is Tasmania. It is not very large. I mean, 20 minutes to get across it.
No. So that is just like the little peninsula part where Port Arthur
Oh,
is. Yeah,
got it. That's
Tasmania
the
is
port.
probably. You guys talk in miles, don't you? So it's like a triangle that's probably like 300, 400 miles on each side.
Okay, yeah, yeah, it's got
Yeah.
some size to it then. Yeah. Um, I'm just kind of skimming through these. Sorry, you can mention anything, I don't know if I'm just kind of seeing if we missed
What else
anything
have I
as far
haven't I
as
mentioned yet? So he did have a girlfriend that he'd met shortly before, and again, there's been some questions about whether or not she was his handler in all this as well,
really.
because there's interesting conversations back and forth, and she was with him the night before, and all the kind of like unusual stuff that wasn't maybe in their usual sort of hangout mix and that type of thing as well. But yeah, it's
It's
just a
crazy.
wild
Yeah.
story.
So he was kind of mental faculties weren't all there, but he had some game, I guess, He was able, I don't know if you guys know what that is,
Yeah,
he had
yeah.
some game, you know what I mean?
So this
Must
guy
have been a
had like
smooth talker. Sorry.
this guy has like long blonde hair down to about his shoulders. And the people
Okay.
that survived the cafe, out of 200 people that saw him, there's only two that positively identified him as the people that the police were trying to push down their throats. Like, was it this guy? It's this guy. Because he actually was, this guy they've pinned it on was at the Seascape Cottage for the final showdown. And they tried to burn that location down too at the time. And he ran out. And some people say it was like he was sedated. So it was like they drugged him and they wanted him to die and burn in the fire. But he ran out on fire and
Oh
survived.
shit.
But the
Oh
people in the
man.
cafe say that the guy that did the shooting had long blonde hair well past his shoulder and possibly like a wig, right? To look like this other guy because the shooter had like
Wow.
pitted acne face. This other guy has baby face, smooth skin that everyone that knew him and stuff. So it was like, yeah, that try and get a double for the actual mass killing part of it, then pin it on him at the final siege showdown.
Holy shit, that makes perfect sense, and it sounds wow, dude. This was an operation. You know what I mean? I wonder why they focused on Australia first. I guess you did well. Like you said, it's the training ground for the New World Order.
And it's everything we're seeing now, right? Like Australia has the strictest lockdowns, the strictest mandates, the strictest anti-Semitism laws. Like it's just crazy now. They're putting people in jail for wearing Palestine T-shirts and stuff in the last few months. So yeah,
I saw that. From the river to the sea is a crazy thing to put somebody in jail for. You could be referring to anything. I mean,
yeah,
realistically, I mean, it didn't even have a Palestinian flag on her shirt.
no, and
I was
there was
surprised. I thought it did or something. Like I thought the colors were there or something. Nope, just black and white shirt.
there's another guy got arrested. I think he had like a Nazi or some sort of tattoo on his calf at the beach. Someone else like rang up the cops and dobbed him in, and it's just out of control here. We had so many false flag anti-Semitic attacks last year that got debunked, and then obviously it
Hmm.
all built up to the Bondi massacre,
Yeah,
which we spoke about. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. And Cohen, the guy from allegedly IDF. You know what I mean? I don't know if did you see that detail? Did that make
as
it
in
around
the
your area
shooter,
there?
or no?
Yes, his last name is Cohen, and he actually somebody found him, a guy that looked just like him, and he was an IDF soldier, and his last name
Okay,
is Cohen. I mean, the guy looks identical to him, and I'm pretty sure it was him. So that's kind of what's been going around over here on X and whatnot,
I think I
regarding
did.
that. Whenever that happened.
It's always so hard to know what's fake or AI or if that is real these
Hmm.
days. But what I do know is that these guys were on the ASIO intelligence agency watch list and he owned 6 guns. So how on earth you're allowed to own 6 guns in Australia when you're already on a watch list? And then they traveled to the Philippines, I think it was, in an area that's known to like radicalize Islam people. And again, a lot of that is done by the intelligence agencies, as we know. So why is he allowed to
Yeah.
travel to this area in the weeks before Bondi? Return back to Australia with no questioning, allowed to have 6 guns, and then again, the police station in Bondi is like 100 meters from Bondi. And I don't know if you've ever seen the TV show like Bondi Beach or whatever. There's always lifeguards, police, security there. So again, how there was no one allowed to take like half an hour to get there, and for someone to, it was like a citizen that spear tackled him initially. Like how if people, no one's there to shoot him or take him down or stop this as soon as it breaks out is again big question.
No, absolutely. And it's so funny that you just brought up what you just said about the Philippines. Terry Nichols with the OKC bombing in the 90s.
Yeah,
And everybody leaves Terry Nichols out because it would connect too much of this exact thing you're talking about. He took multiple trips to the Philippines. And while he was there, the terrorist that did the World Trade Center bombing in the 90s, before the actual, terror attack in, 9/11, he was there when Terry Nichols was there. And so they were in the same training camp which that you're referring to in the Philippines. Here, I'll show you. I mean, this isn't like a hidden fact. This is something that like you can find out. Terry Nichols, look at this. He sometimes traveled to the Philippines while she remained in Kansas. Now, in the Philippines, there is, like you said, a known intelligence terrorist radicalization hub that they then send them out on missions around the world. And so I just wanted to point that out because this is a running theme with multiple major false flag events that go on throughout the world. This is not an isolated thing. And it rhymes. There's too many things here that are just identical or rhyme with, other events. It's just too hard to ignore. There's no coincidences.
that's wild. There you go. There's another dot to join, right? But
Hmm.
that's pretty much everything about the Port Arthur massacres to give people an overview. Like I said, you can
Yeah.
go into this. There's a Facebook group that's got like 20,000 something people in it that's got hundreds of documents and clippings and testimony. Then there's the Wasp Files YouTube channel with all the videos if you want to know more about it. And I did one dedicated video deep dive on it too. But that's kind of the outline of all this stuff and all the corruption. And yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. IQ, the marksman, the shooter. I'll just skim through these just to make sure, we just touch on random
oh,
stuff. But yeah,
that's
Wasp.
another one there. He was
What's
left-handed.
this?
Martin was the guy that they pinned was known to be a left-handed shooter, but everyone, all the witnesses that day said the guy that carried this out was right-handed.
2017 for the first time. Clips of Brian's police interview. Oh shit. So they released it in 2017 for the first time, huh?
I mean, you could find this stuff on like
Martin
fringe
reveals he's
sites, but
left-handed. So is Martin saying that he was doing the shooting still in, or is he saying he was doing the shootings in this video here?
it's like he has been MK Ultra or had split
Oh yeah.
personalities a lot of the time he's talking. But he did own a gun and do some hobby shooting. But again, this was pretty common in Tasmania in the early 90s. If you live like semi-rurally, most people I grew up with, most all my friends had guns. Their parents had guns, and we did shooting when we we're out in the bush. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, I mean, yeah, that's just such a sad worst thing ever to have to get taken away and then live in a post world of that. It's crazy. Uh, Guilty before trial. Do you guys have a normal constitutional, like, Supreme Court justice system like we do in America, or are they able to do things like this where it's not beyond a reasonable doubt, etc.?
Yeah, this was again, they were meant to have a trial, but they never had a trial, and the media
Yeah.
wasn't meant to publish photos of him. Again, it's even an anomaly how something that's happening late on a Sunday afternoon in a pre-internet age, and how the media around Australia even got the photo of him to print, and
Mm.
they actually darkened his eyes and like altered it to make him look like evil in the
Oh
photos and
yeah.
stuff as well. Yeah,
They do that shit. I mean, fuck, they did that with Joe Rogan over COVID. Remember that? They like made his face gray.
yeah,
I mean, they do that shit.
yeah.
Man, that's insane. Yeah, no, I just altered newspaper images as well. What? Yeah, that's what you just said. Yeah, you're on it. Very read up on this. Definitely. I'm gonna have to check out your video on this for sure.
But yeah, if you want to change gears a bit and get into some of the other weird and wonderful stuff that's
Absolutely.
been happening in Australia, yeah, so I love the ancient Australia sort of theories, and I think there's a lot of parallels again to America and the Grand Canyon. You've got all this stuff that's reportedly found, like caves and Egyptian stuff throughout the Grand Canyon, right? And it's like this red dust bowl. That is like the Australian outback. It's just like this red dust bowl for 99% of Australia, and there's just this scattering of people that live along the coast. So I had there's some guests on Aussie archaeologists the other day, and they've been doing this for like 20, 30 years, finding like pyramids, hieroglyphs, elongated skulls, large alien like skulls, Chinese artifacts of metals that they had tested that have got alloys not known to us. There's just so many of these anomalies that people have found around Australia. And this guy translated the hieroglyphs and actually tells the story of the Egyptians coming to Australia, and they had a better like technical knowledge of how to build pyramids and stuff. But they came to Australia to seek the Aboriginal people's ancient spiritual knowledge and history of the earth and stuff. Because if Australian Aboriginals are the oldest living culture, right, and they have all the Dreamtime stories of what it used to be, maybe pre-flood, whatever, when there was giant beings and a lot of the huge animals in Australia. We've got plenty of those skeletons of the megafauna. We've still got the second tallest trees in the world in Tasmania, where I live, behind California redwoods. So we have trees over 100 meters tall in Tasmania.
Holy shit.
So it's like that something got reset on the mainland, and then Tasmania still has these huge trees. We still have like the Tasmanian devil. We still have the oldest Aboriginal people that all got sort of like forced down into Tasmania when something happened. And then the British, when they colonized, the official story is that they genocided all the Aboriginal people. But again, was it like a bit of disease? And is that the official story or not? Because there are stories that there were Aboriginal people living peacefully with white people or Europeans in some areas. We never fully know, right? But something has happened to like force animals and the native people down all through Australia down into Tasmania. That's where the last Aboriginal people were, and the last like Tasmanian devils. Yeah, there's something about Australia, I think, like Ayers Rock, Pine Gap Military Base, all this weird and wonderful stuff in the outback. And there's all these huge, huge regions, like thousands of square kilometers, that are off limits to the public, of national parks and all that usual stuff. So,
Man, it's funny. I would love living there, I bet, besides the fact that they lock down free speech and, guns and everything else. Whenever we first got on here, I saw that image in the back of your room there. And I was like, and I saw those little boards and shit, what is that game that you play with those things back, the
like
paddles?
The
Is that
Nintendo
cricket?
64. Oh, you're talking about cricket? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so I like saw that shit. I was like, dude, it's probably awesome living there. I bet you have an awesome life. And I bet that the vibes and what I'm getting at is that the energies in Tasmania are probably very much I bet they're very grounding and they're very, I bet it resonates with the soul while you're there. I guarantee, how is that? Can you speak to that?
Oh, it's an amazing place. So, like, there's that many beaches or hikes or waterfalls within like an hour or two of where I live, which is a second biggest town city in Tasmania. Population, let's say 150, 200,000. So yeah, it's an awesome place. But that was kind of like the Australian culture, probably peaked in like the mid 2000s ish, right? Before we had all this mass immigration, where now white European sort of people are minorities in Sydney and Melbourne and most of our major cities. But like, yeah, the culture of cricket and Aussie rules football down there, one of the best sports, which is kind of taken off in the US. Like all these US streamers love watching Aussie rules because it's one of the toughest sports in the world, like no padding, and you're allowed to bang crash as hard as you want and that type of stuff. So Australia just had a really good culture of sun, beach, nature, good unique sports. Most people are happy and healthy because we've got such good like food, and agriculture is a huge part of our industry and stuff. And then like everything, it just slowly kind of had these agendas and these narratives and this perversion of culture. And yeah, it's just kind of sad to see it all change.
When did Australia start getting colonialized by the British?
So the official story is Captain Cook in 1778. So very similar to America,
Very
1776.
funny. Okay, because that's what I was gonna say. It's almost like so America to the Freemasons is, if you read about Manly P. Hall, Secret Destiny of America, it's to bring in the new Atlantis. And I wonder, there's a part of me that wonders if the British, whenever America was being created, if they said, we're gonna have our own America. You know what I mean? And we know another great place. Because America, I believe, I agree with you. The Grand Canyon, we have a lot of old, ancient, I bet, history, megaliths, etc. And so I believe it's a very good, energetic, large landmass, great place to grab, right?
Yeah.
And I think the British kind of went for the same style of idea where they're like, we're going to do that in Australia. And as you said, it's the testing ground for the New World Order. Well, you guys don't, you guys were always ran by the British, right? We seceded from them. And so that's the different, allegedly, quote unquote, right?
Yeah.
One could argue that the British still runs DC and therefore everywhere else because we're, incorporated to DC with our birth.
Yeah.
Get in a whole rabbit hole with that one. But anyway, Australia, I think, was the British version, and you guys have been fast tracked because you've always been ran by the royals.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think it's so interesting as well because we're colonized by the British, still, we still answer to the Queen or the King now. But then it's kind of like we're so closely allied with the US, and we've constantly sent troops to all these wars that you guys have, we kept getting dragged into all these things. But then our
Really,
biggest
I wasn't aware that Australia was involved with many wars. Maybe I'm just not read up enough on that. Maybe that's a known
no. So
thing.
whenever there's the wars in the Middle East, like Australia get asked to send some troops and some fighter planes just to show that we're still on side, kind of thing. But then our
Got it.
closest trade partner is China, and Australia was one of the only countries in the world that didn't have a GFC because we were just part of this boom when China was building everything and we're exporting all this steel and minerals and stuff. So that's kind of like why Australians the lucky country because we do have it so good, right? The sun and property prices have gone absolutely insane. The average price of a house in Australia is over $1 million now.
Holy
Um,
shit! The average price. Yeah, but what's your pay like there? I mean, not you, but I'm saying like, what's the average salary? Are they making upwards of a
no,
couple
no,
hundred
it's like
grand?
the ratio of income to affordability is one of the worst in the world. Yeah, yeah,
Really? Yeah, it's getting like
yeah.
that here. Very much so.
So you
I
have
got
this
fucked out of yeah.
Yeah, you have this
Yeah.
backdrop of everyone thinks they're rich on paper that got into the property market. And my generation was probably the last one to do that. It's impossible now. If you're someone in your early 20s and you're earning 70, 80, 90, 100K a year, we've got interest rates at 5 or 6% now. You're not borrowing $1 million and
Yeah.
yeah, it's just unaffordable. So
See,
we
yeah, so
went
you're at the same exact ending point as me where it's like, 2020, if I had my cards perfectly right, like my parent, if I just had my shit perfectly right and somehow in my early 20s could buy a house, I would have been good. But other than that, that was it.
Yeah.
2022, 23, 24, it was over. Done.
Yeah, they've basically doubled our money supply
Hmm.
since COVID as well. But yeah, so you've got this generation of people that have got this she'll be right attitude in Australia, and we're pretty laid back. Australia is one of the most heavily fluoridated countries in the world as well.
Mm.
Propaganda, Operation Matchbox. So all the Nazis came here too to infiltrate our media, our doctors, our psychs, and all these crazy
Whoa.
experiments. Like Nicole Kidman's dad, Anthony Kidman, was one of the worst at all this in Australia.
He's like
Um,
a Epstein style dude with,
yeah,
allegedly, because that's why she was picked for Eyes Wide Shut, by, we're
yeah,
talking about the same person, right? Nicole Kidman. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah, yeah,
fair.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
Operation
yeah, Aussie.
Matchbox, dude. You just dropped a few things on me. Sorry, we gotta hold on.
You're
Operation
right.
Matchbox. I've never heard of this. So this is paperclip for Australia, huh?
Yeah.
Holy shit, dude, that's crazy. So you guys, so I know that they went to Russia, New Zealand, and then also Australia, huh? Holy shit.
And some of the like I've had multiple survivors that were part of this project on who Anthony Kidman allegedly was their handler and torturer and programmer and Australia, yeah, again built by the Freemasons. There's Freemason buildings in like every small little country town across Australia, and it's all just the tunnel networks here. Like there's even a mainstream article yesterday about how Melbourne has got some of the most extreme tunnel networks in the world. So people think of like the catacombs and stuff, but again, this is why the kind of Tartaria reset angle is so interesting in Australia. There's meant to be nothing here in like 1800 after it's kind of settled, right? And now
Yeah.
you've got all these huge tunnel networks that are being found. Same thing with like these cathedrals and all these amazing buildings when we're meant to have had like horse and carts and dirt roads and stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, so New Zealand, Australia, I know I've heard a lot of like old stories about like that's where, a lot of the stories of like some of the astral entities were found, right? You've got your elves and gnomes and nymphs and etc. They have a lot of those kind of cryptids, right? They have a lot of those, or is that a different word for a different thing? But they have a lot of those stories there, right?
Yeah, a lot of it's called a yowie. That's like our version of the Bigfoot.
Mm,
And there are like yowie hunters over the years that have found those footprints and bones and stuff. Man, the other thing that's interesting here, if you want to get into like chimeras and genetic engineering and stuff. So, have you
yeah.
seen like platypuses and the unique animals that we have here that scientists didn't even believe they were real? Because a platypus has got like claws and then a beaver's tail and then a duck's bill and then it's a mammal, but it lays eggs. It's like a hybrid of a reptilian and a mammal, right? So we've got all
Hmm.
these crazy animals here, and we know we have this megafauna here. The Aboriginal people, when British scientists came here, they're obsessed with them and their blood. And so I don't know if you've heard of gold blood, which is like different to rhesus negative. If you talk about the rhesus factor in blood, have
Hmm.
you ever been down this rabbit hole?
Like RH negative versus,
Yes,
or am I wrong?
Rh.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So Rh negative. There's a third type called Rh null that doesn't have any of the antigens, antibodies, and only 50 people in the world, I think, have ever officially been found with it. But the first ever one was an Aboriginal Australian, which gets into like, are they the untouched versus these other hybrid humans that have all been tweaked or something throughout ancient history? And so there's a lot
Wow.
of experiments done on them. And then you think about the name of blood types A, B, and O, and they're called Abo original people.
Oh
Aboriginal.
shit. Yeah. Wow. Good one. So, and they also were known for having like people argue that there was a lot of sound tools that were used cymatically to raise, objects. And I know that like the didgeridoo, etc., things like that. I don't know if I said that how you really pronounce
Yeah, yeah.
that.
Now,
But things like that are, is there something there? Maybe they had some of this giant Nephilim kind of technology, because some argue that that's how they built the pyramids, and if the giants built the pyramids or Nephilim, then one could argue that's the same, you know, style of
yeah.
technology.
Uh, yeah, again, it's interesting with the didgeridoos and that, but I've heard people talk because the Aboriginal culture have all these dream time stories, and it makes you think about a world that was more etheric, just in general, and like,
Mm,
was that veil thinner for these people that were different bloodline, maybe pineal gland, maybe fully activated, living 100% out in nature with like these sound instruments and stuff. So was it just like a completely different time when that veil was thinner? And then you've got those Aboriginal cave drawings of like these demonic grey alien looking beings, and then you've got these hieroglyphs telling this story of how these Egyptians came here to visit, and also telling the same story of how we were genetically modified by beings from, I'm pretty sure it was Sirius, in these translated hieroglyphs. So yeah, you've got all these weird and
Absolutely.
wonderful stories.
The serious thing gets me because these people, in these satanic cults worship that same star. And the way you could point that out is just like you did with your dates in April. You could do the same thing in August, but it's a lot darker. So, like Son of Sam, he was a satanic killer. I believe he was arrested in August, or no, he did his killings in August, and I think he was also arrested in August. But so was Epstein. Epstein was arrested in August as well. And so, man, I forgot to put that up there. But Epstein was arrested in August as well. And so you can go look at August 10th and all these events that happened. I implore you to do the same experiment. But those are known as the dog days. And the Son of Sam said he spoke to a dog, right? He said he spoke to a dog that had him do these murders. And Sirius, the dog star, right? So this is where we get into a weird place with that, right? And I know that's part of the Pleiades. Am I correct? Like the 7 sister cluster, is that in there?
Yeah.
And that is your, like, on your flag. Am I wrong? Right? That's the the Australian flag, correct?
Yeah, well, it's meant to be the Southern Cross. Is meant to be the states, but
Oh,
yeah,
really? But they did it like just like that, yeah.
The other star originally was the 6-pointed star, the same as Israel that we had, and then we had, because Australia has had a different number of states and territories over the years, and then they changed it to a 7-pointed star. I'm not sure what date they did that, but that kind of is a good segue into like Canberra, our capital city, which was it's like those, is it limestone flats or granite, whatever they look at for that like conductive material. So they basically found this huge area in the middle of nowhere, and it was one of the members of the Bolivian Illuminati came out and said this is going to make a great capital of Australia in like early 1800s or something weird. You can find that. But then Canberra's got all that like Washington Vatican symbolism where like it's literally shaped like a pyramid and a Masonic compass. It's aligned to like, I think it's the star Agar, which is like one of the Baal stars or something weird like that.
Algorithm, Ego. Yeah.
It's got the owl, like the owl there in front of Canberra. It's got the 2 pillars of the Freemasons. It's got
Is it Cambria? How do you spell it? Is it Cambria or Canberra?
Canberra. So then you've got the phallus that looks down through at a dome. Inside, it's got the black cube. I did a whole video breaking this all down the other day.
Holy shit.
Just crazy.
Let me see if I can find what you're talking about.
Symbolism.
What would you call that? Because I just want to give a visual because I'm curious. I've never even heard of this. What is it called? Is it just Canberra what?
Parliament House. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, I was just curious.
No, you're right.
All right.
The huge flagpole on top is a pyramid. The black cube directly underneath it, and the metal framing holding up this huge flagpole is all the Rothschilds Maltese cross. Yeah, you can just go on the Hollywood trees. It's got everything occult and symbolic all embedded in there, but you don't know any of this unless you got the eyes to see, right?
Really? Yeah. No, exactly. That's how it always is, isn't it? Like, people talk about, whatever. I'm not going to get onto that. Yeah. So this is it right here, right?
Yeah.
And obviously it's a terrible angle, as far as like, there's more to it.
Yeah. If you can't find any good images, if you want to pull up the video I did the other day and just flick through some of the stuff, but, there's some black magic Tau symbolism in there as well, I found.
Yeah,
you guys get the gist.
Yeah, I'm fine that. Yeah, no, that's crazy. So, and that's the Parliament House where they meet and obviously do things. That's how it goes. They got to have that energy manifestation going on with the structural buildings. Oh, before I forget, you were talking about the veil being thinned earlier and how that might be the case with these people back then, right? Is it possible that maybe, as we talked about with the cataclysms, that we know happened everywhere, maybe they were untouched in Australia? which would mean that their verbal history goes back a lot longer. And quite possibly, if you've ever heard of The Secret History of the World, it's a book that gets into the stages of man from the secret society's point of view, which is this idea that we started as androgynous, we were almost etheric beings, and then we kind of, from plant to vegetable being to mineral being, and then became, kind of slowly became what we are today. And we were humans, androgynous, then we weren't, and then it was kind of like this third eye was able to see through the veil better because everything wasn't as physical. Our skulls weren't as hardened over. And they even pointed out that like there's some structural things to our skull that you could tell that it is soft for longer and then it hardens, which shows that like maybe it's almost a microcosm of like what it was, where that shows that was a softer area there where your third eye is, etc. So it's like a whole thing. But it's funny because it almost proves that with their verbal history by the Aboriginals, when you speak about the dream state kind of, visions that they would have.
Yeah. I mean, this is a wicked rabbit hole I love going down. And Archaic's, I don't know if you follow some of his stuff, and he's big on like that there was a vapor canopy, or there was a time where there was like conditions, the environment was different, maybe higher oxygen and humidity and that type of thing. And that's when we had these giant trees and giant megafauna and possibly giant humans, right? And then you get into like the liger stuff with the male lion and the tiger having huge offspring that can't breed themselves. There's this tie into like the Nephilim story. So yeah, and I mean, I have friends that have told me that they've seen 7-8 foot Aboriginals in these off limit national parks still living there and stuff. Yeah.
Holy shit. Okay, so there's like, dude, and that's the thing. Our world is so big. You can't act like this shit's something crazy's not out there still. It's like, yeah, we have these myths and isolated stories of this and that, and nothing really contextual to go off of. We hear things about like, for instance, Hollow Earth, right? I mean, there's caves that go down like the Kentucky Mammoth Cave. But then if you go down in there, I mean, I'm pretty sure it gets blocked off. So it's like they keep you from finding what could lead you into the reality of your world. So we really just don't ever know. So anyway, to that point, I bet there is some Aboriginals that are still, pretty much living with the same genetics that they had.
Yeah, well, there's definitely those populations that are still living out in the wild, but then this is the next level, right? And these are really off-limit places that only Aboriginal people are allowed to apply to go there. And friend of a friend swears he's been there and still seen like megafauna, crocodiles, and huge Aboriginal people and crazy, crazy stuff. So,
Okay, dude, we take that as fact here on 6G. Let's go. I'm just kidding. Yeah, cool. So yeah, is there any other cool stories you got about the Aboriginals or cryptids, or not even cryptids? I keep saying that. What is the right word for etheric beings? What's the right word for that?
Oh, just the paranormal, I guess. But no, Australia does have a lot of famous stories of UFOs. So, have you ever heard of is it the Brazilian UFO incident where they landed at the school in Africa and all the kids?
Yes, and they all
So
say the same. Yeah.
So that happened in Australia. If you want to Google Westall, 1966, hundreds of school kids, a dozen teachers, UFO lands on the grass. They all see it. They all draw what they saw. Military show up just as the news crews are showing up. And this is a rural school. So again, you got to ask, how did the men in black get to this place within an hour kind of thing? And they all start telling them you didn't see anything, blah, blah, blah. So these kids that were only in like primary school, this is coming up to the 60-year reunion. And a lot of them are still alive, right? They were like 10 at the time and now they're 70. So a lot of these people are still speaking out about this and what they saw. And they still swear to this day they saw this UFO and it landed on the school and all this type of stuff.
That's crazy. Yeah, I did hear about that. I remember, is it MUFON or whatever? They did a whole thing on like, or maybe it was them, or maybe it was Jacques Vallée that was talking about this. And Jacques Vallée, he's one of those people that thinks this is a conscious event. And I kind of wonder about that sometimes. You know what I mean? How much of this is a not literally just conscious, but you know what I'm saying, like metaphysical conscious event, where it's not just like physical entities flying here on a flying saucer per se, right? What do you think about that? What's your thoughts on that?
The craziest interview we've ever done was the other day with survivor Fiona Barnett, who said she's been deep in the underground military bases and seen everything from greys to reptilians and the different types of UFOs. And she described there is just, the metallic military back engineered stuff, all the way through these conscious living ships that again are just like in and out of our frequency, or however you want to describe it, or made of light or whatever. So I think there's a whole spectrum of things that we're seeing. But yeah, heaps of UFO stories in Australia, people being abducted in the outback, particularly along the Great Australian Bight, which is that drive that you can do all along the ocean, along the bottom, basically, of Australia, from one side to another. And that section of Australia is sheer cliffs. It looks like it's been like sawn off from, did it break apart from Antarctica, something like that. It's got a bit of a weird feel to it as well, a bit of an anomaly.
Yeah, and so just to give you context on like why I asked that. So back a long time ago, people would talk about elves, and they would talk about these gray-faced beings, and they were like little beings, and they would describe the same kind of abductions that they would go through with like aliens in modern day, right? And so it just makes me wonder like how much of this is an ancient thing that's being described again, obviously, there's probably some differences, but I just wonder, you know what I mean? How much of this is a metaphysical, etheric event that's going on where we materialize it so our brain can compartmentalize what's going on, etc. Right? Not that that's the facts, but I'm just wondering, how much of that is going on.
Yeah, well, have you seen the Aboriginal cave paintings that look exactly like Greys?
Yeah, definitely. Aliens? Yeah, but again, I just wonder how much of this is an astral event. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't make it not real. I'm not saying it's not real. I'm just saying that it's, like you said before, the veil was thinner. And so what I'm saying is maybe our government is tapping into that thinning veil and experimenting on people and showing them things that they wouldn't otherwise see in this mostly physical reality that they have is bogged down with phones and digital electric grid, etc. Right? So they keep us separated from this place that's already hard to get to, and maybe they're the only ones doing experiments, so that's why only people are experiencing these kind of things now today when it comes to government and Air Force, etc. But before they could experience it every day because it was different. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it's not real. No. I'm just saying it's maybe different than what we're being told.
Yeah, I got a couple of thoughts on that. So you've seen the clips where you have like a tuning fork, and if you have the same one, they'll basically get into harmony, right?
Yeah.
I just wonder now, for people that are living completely out in nature, no fluoride, blah, 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 like, are they vibrating already at a different frequency than now that we're constantly being pumped blue light into our eyes, pineal gland, our brains, surrounded by EMF and all this stuff? Like, are we already? I think we are de-evolving and getting dumber, right?
Me too.
And then this ties into, again, survivors that have spoken about CERN, and Australia has its own CERN in Melbourne too, and survivors that have openly said that this is, they are the portals where they're planning on trying to thin that veil and bring in these entities. And have they already done that and type of thing?
Yeah. So we're on the same page. That's exactly what I think is going on, right? So my point is like just that I think these are the same entities that we've been told about for a long time. And so maybe it would do us justice to kind of go back and look at like, they don't have our interest at heart, and that guy that runs D-Wave, right, that talks about, it's like you're standing in an alien altar, of an alien god or something, right? And he's talking about that AI technology, quantum technology he's doing. And I think that he's telling you the truth. And what he's talking about is old Lovecraftian old ones, which is very similar to what you see in Stranger Things. And I'm sorry, but what part of Stranger Things looked like a nice, utopia? You know what I'm saying? Like, what part of that looked like it was going to step us into something happy? Now, I'm not saying that there's nothing, good out of it, but I don't know how much we should fuck with it. You know what I mean? There's so many stories of like, it just not like them just not having our interest at heart, right? So why would, I don't know. Let's deal with the devil.
Yeah. And I mean, the money, like, you look at the state of the world and people are just waking up to, how can you justify spending billions on CERN or billions on trying to go to Mars? Like, this planet is in such a state at the moment that nothing that they are doing and spending money on makes any sense at all. And this is why it's got so crazy that people are waking up so fast now.
Absolutely. You can't underestimate the anti-human nature of this agenda. And I think that is something you can never underestimate. Yeah. Well, we should go through the chat real quick, and then anything else you want to talk about? Anything else? We've done an hour. We could go a little longer if you want. It's up to you.
If someone just said show the black cube, if you go to my YouTube channel, the video I did on Australia what was the title? But yeah, you'll be able to see it from the title. That was about
Here,
all the weirdness and the cult stuff. Yeah.
yeah, I'll pull up your Instagram while we're, or you said YouTube?
YouTube channel for the full video. But there's also a New World Order plaque that someone found that was really old with a really creepy message in Western Australia as well. I put up in that video. So yeah, that's got all the weird, creepy anomalies and occult hidden stuff if you want to watch that video. The other
Yeah, you
one
got some
is
banger videos, definitely. I've watched a couple of them. I love it. And yeah, the Epstein, you got some one or two victims that you talked to with the Epstein situation.
I've spoken to 2 Australian victims, but then also Annika Lucas, Juliet Bryant that saw Epstein's shapeshift. I've got another big Aussie victim coming on soon. So I just love hearing these people's stories and joining the dots. And they got people that sounded crazy when they were speaking out 10 years ago, and they've just been so
Yep.
vindicated now.
Absolutely, it is. And I've got my theories on why that's occurring right now and what's going on. And I'm doing a series right now called Exposure Gate because I think that has a lot. Yeah, it's not by mistake that we're finding all this out. But yeah, I love the work you're doing, and I think it's great. It is good to be vindicated. It's funny, everybody talks about the Epstein stuff today, and it's like, yeah, dude, you were calling me crazy 10 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, this is nothing new, bud. It's like now I'm kind of on to the technocratic, police state being built up around us that you think I'm crazy for today, but in 10 years, you're going to be like, can you believe it? They're, got us in the biodigital convergence. And I'm going to be like, dude, it's a repeat of Epstein, right?
Oh yeah, and there's probably a good place to wrap up for the final thought because I had a chat with another, Grey Monarch that's been on Sam's Tinfoil and stuff. I don't know if you follow him, but
Yeah, absolutely.
I had him on the show and we still keep in touch. And I shared some thoughts with him the other day, and he said something interesting about this passing of the baton, which ties into your exposure gate. They're passing the baton from the Malakians and like the Baal and this like physical evil that they're doing to kids and stuff into more of like a different dimension, like into more of this mind evil where they want to chip people. And it's going to be about like frequencies and virtual realities and overlaying and perception. So they're passing the baton to like the Luciferian doctrine. And I've always thought when you hear beware the light bringer, I've always thought about the screens and fiber optics and where do we get all this technology that's like encasing light compared to the sun
Exactly.
and natural light. Yeah.
And what is that? It's the false light. I mean, it's so literal that you don't even see it because it's right in front of your face.
Yeah.
My next episode I'm doing is on just shout out for everybody that's going to be watching, just kind of giving you a heads up and also telling you about it. But my next episode is going to be about the fingerprinting of apparel, where they want to have digital fingerprints on all apparel. And there's patents that are out. There's already designer companies that are doing it. That with Flock, with the Ring cameras, with Alexa, the Internet of Things, Internet of Bodies, and then of course the Li-Fi. Not many people know, like the light that you're getting, all this LED light emits something called Li-Fi, and that with your Wi-Fi tracks you everywhere you are in your home. I believe that there's more to it, but that's a lot of it there. And so, exactly to your point, that's exactly what's going on. So yeah, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. And everybody's focused, like I said, not to say this isn't important, but a lot of this stuff, my point is in the exposure gate. Yes, it's great to know that they weaponize ticks. It's great to know that there's cures for cancer. It's great to know that they chemically mind control people through vaccines for years. But guess what? We've been saying this for 10 years, more than that. I've been saying for 10 years, there's people that, great people that have been talking about it for 30, 40 years. But now you're finding out, there's things we're telling you about now that you need to listen to. And so a lot of stuff where people are like, the conspiracy theorists are right when I see those posts, I'm like, yeah, and the conspiracy theorists are now telling you, check this out, because it's important, you know what I mean, to listen now, because this is the end game, I believe. But yeah, very crazy. Shout out Cake in a Cup. Shout out Murray. Shout out The Evil Glare. Hello. And Alex, thank you so much. Shout out Neff. Always. Alex, thank you so much for coming on. Tell everybody where they can find you again. I showed it up on the screen, but yeah, make sure that they know because you got some bangers coming out and already out.
Yeah, thanks for having me, mate. So just Nuggets News on all socials and Alex Saunders on X.
Awesome, dude. Well, thank you, everybody. We will be back. I will be back. What day is today? Yeah, I'll be back tomorrow or Saturday to get into all that shit that I just talked about. Otherwise, shout out everybody, and we'll see you later.
Cheers.